There is a quiet architecture inside every mind, a set of invisible channels through which sensation and intention flow. And attention is the plumbing of that architecture, not glamorous, often ignored, but utterly decisive in shaping what becomes meaningful. The brain does not process everything at once. It must decide in real time where to allocate a scarce resource, and the pattern of those allocations sculpts experience. A life shaped by scattered attention feels fragmented and shallow. A life shaped by designed attention feels coherent and deep. The distinction matters because attention organizes time, and time is the medium in which meaning accumulates. Attention evolved as a problem-solving device. It selected signals that mattered for survival amid sensory abundance. It filtered noise from pattern. It prioritized immediate threats and promising opportunities. That ancestral logic still operates, but the modern environment floods the mechanisms with inputs of a kind they never evolved to handle. Rapid informational pulses, endless novelty, and engineered distraction. When an organ tuned for local danger faces a reality of global stimulation, the result is misaligned prioritization. The architecture of attention must be redesigned with that mismatch in mind because adaptations that worked in ancestral contexts do not automatically scale to contemporary informational ecologies. Thinking about attention as infrastructure shifts the question from willpower to design. Willpower is a fragile capacitor. It runs out. Infrastructure is robust when it reduces reliance on momentary strength by encoding desirable flows into stable structures. Consider physical infrastructure like roads and bridges. Those artifacts stabilize movement across landscapes. They reduce friction and make certain routes habitual. Attention architecture does the same for the inner landscape. Routines, environmental cues, textual layouts, notification policies, and interface constraints act as bridges and rails that guide focus without taxing the momentary muscle of self-control. There are several layers to attend to. The first layer is the body because attention is embodied. Sleep, nutrition, movement, and circadian rhythms set the baseline bandwidth. The brain cannot allocate attention effectively if energy states are depleted. Small physiological deficits produce large cognitive leaks. The second layer is the environment, a set of affordances that invite or repel focus. Clutter scatters attention. Minimalist spaces concentrate it. Light, sound, and ergonomics are not merely aesthetic choices. They are structural parameters that alter the probabilities of distraction and sustained engagement. The third layer is social architecture. Expectations, norms, and shared rituals shape attention at scale by aligning individual flows with collective rhythms. A quiet library and a bustling cafe are not merely different acoustically. They are different attention ecosystems. Design principles emerge from viewing these layers as systems rather than as isolated hacks. The first principle is constraint. Constraints reduce the space of possible actions, and when chosen wisely, they push attention toward desirable patterns. Constraints are not limitations imposed for moralizing reasons. They are enabling devices because focus arises from limitation. The second principle is redundancy. Memory and systems that record and rehearse important elements reduce the need for continuous vigilance. The mind can offload certain decisions to structures so attention is freed for novelty. The third principle is feedback. Attention systems that provide timely signals about performance help adjust allocation and maintain motivation. The fourth principle is modularity. Small, interchangeable practices permit experimentation without the risk of catastrophic failure. These principles inform practical architectures. Consider a day divided into blocks of high variable and low variable attention. High variable blocks are structured to allow deep work, uninterrupted focus, while low variable blocks are designed for lighter tasks and social connection. The environment for deep work minimizes interruptive cues. It restricts open tabs, it silences inbound pings, and it presents a clear, bounded problem. The environment for light tasks embraces short loops of action and recovery. This separation is not moral judgment about tasks. It is pragmatic allocation that respects the neurodynamics of sustained attention. Attention also responds to narrative. The mind loves story because narrative compresses complex sequences into meaningful arcs. A day that is narrated frames work as a segment in a larger story of progress. And stories create forward motion. Small rituals that mark the start and end of focus blocks act like scene transitions in a film. These transitions narrow the probability of drift and increase the likelihood that attention will re-engage when needed. Rituals are simple bridges between intention and action. They transform vague plans into embodied habits. Tools change the topology of attention. Phones, feeds, and notifications alter the cost of switching focus. Design choices that prioritize immediate engagement tend to increase switch rates and reduce deep attention. Interfaces that privilege frictionless transitions produce shallow traversals across many contexts rather than deep immersion in one. Conversely, tools designed with attention in mind introduce friction where random wandering needs to be reduced, and they lower friction where deliberate focus is required. The architecture of attention therefore requires a conversation between human rhythms and interface constraints. Institutions matter even more. Workplaces and schools are attention factories. Their scheduling, reward systems, and cultural norms determine which attention patterns are practiced. When institutions reward immediate responsiveness, they inadvertently train shallow attention. When institutions honor deep focus and provide rhythms of repair, they cultivate sustained attention at scale. Public policy and organizational design are therefore levers in the architecture of attention because they distribute incentives and make certain behaviors legible and repeatable. Economics joins the conversation. Attention is scarce, and markets have learned to capture and monetize it. Advertising, algorithmic recommendation, and attention design create pressure to fragment focus because engagement metrics are short-term. The economic architecture can be steered toward collective goods if incentives align with durable attention. Subscription models and membership models, for instance, can reward depth if they decouple revenue from instantaneous clicks. The creative challenge is to build economic systems that value meaningful engagement over ephemeral consumption. Measurement is a tool that supports refinement. Attention can be measured not only by duration, but by depth, by task completion, and by the subjective sense of progress. Simple metrics such as focus minutes, return to task latency, and continuity of narrative provide actionable feedback. Measurement without learning is surveillance, but measurement with experimentation is a method for improving architecture. Small tests that alter a parameter, measure effect, and iterate produce gradual improvements because attention infrastructure is both behavioral and technical. The social dimension is decisive because attention is contagious. Shared rhythms synchronize focus. A room where many people are reading sends a signal that deep work is normative. Synchronous sessions of group silence, such as co-working with a known schedule, produce social cues that reduce the cognitive cost of entry into focus. Rituals of collective attention create public goods. They reduce anxiety about missing out and lower the social penalty for opting into deep work. A layer of ethical reflection belongs alongside technical design. Attention shaping is not neutral. It channels agency and influences priorities. Designing for attention therefore carries moral weight. Architects of attention must choose whether systems nudge toward civic learning and genuine craft or toward commodified distraction. The ethic of attention design favors autonomy, transparency, and respect for slow processes. It discourages manipulative tactics that exploit cognitive biases for short-term gain. There is a historical aspect to the architecture of attention that reconnects current practices to a longer arc. Human cultures have long designed external memory devices, from mnemonic techniques to libraries and script. The externalization of memory is a form of attention engineering because it stabilizes knowledge in the world and reduces the need for fragile internal maintenance. Digital externalities are just the newest layer in that tradition. They offer enormous power to extend mind when shaped for repair and access, and they threaten attention when shaped for capture and churn. The metaphor of urban planning helps. Cities that work have clear main streets, quiet neighborhoods, and public spaces that invite reflection. They integrate function and respite. Attention landscapes function similarly. A healthy attention city has places for deep solitude, places for moderate collaboration, and public commons where shared curiosity can grow. Designing such cities of attention at the level of life requires intentional placement of practices, rituals, and tools so that the mind can move through varied states without excessive friction. Training attention is possible and not mystical. Practices such as focused reading, deliberate practice, meditative cultivation, and disciplined play are methods for reshaping attentional bandwidth. These practices change the brain by creating denser patterns of synaptic coordination in pathways that support sustained focus. The change is real and measurable. The practice does not create invulnerability to distraction. It increases the capacity to re-engage and to resist shallow pulls. It is a kind of skill training analogous to physical conditioning. Culture plays a role in signaling what deserves attention. Societies that celebrate deep craft generate norms and narratives that scaffold sustained engagement. Stories about apprenticeship, about slow mastery, about revision and repair normalize attention as an honorable endeavor. Conversely, cultures that celebrate endless novelty and sensationalism erode the social capital needed to maintain deep attention. Narratives steer collective attention by signaling which paths are meaningful and which are ephemeral. Architectural attention design extends to public technology platforms. Platforms that offer long-form structure, curation, and slow discovery help readers and learners develop sustained pathways through content. Platforms that emphasize short loops of gratification magnify shallow attention. The choice to design for duration rather than for spikes is an ethical one that affects public cognition. Attention architects must consider how platform affordances shape collective mental ecology. There is also a political dimension. Democracies require citizens who can deliberate. Public reason depends on capacities to hold complexity, to weigh evidence, and to engage in extended argument. When attention is fragmented by noise and manipulative forms of engagement, the quality of public deliberation declines. Building institutions that allow for slow, reasoned exchange strengthens the democratic fabric. The architecture of attention therefore becomes part of civic design because it determines whether publics can process information at the scales required for governance. Equity intersects attention design. Scarcity of attention resources is often unequally distributed. Those burdened by precarious livelihoods or overcrowded environments have fewer opportunities for deep focus. Addressing attention. Inequality means designing spaces and policies that expand access to restorative environments, to education in attentional skills, and to public infrastructure that reduces extraneous cognitive load. Attention justice is a necessary component of social justice because cognitive bandwidth is a prerequisite for participation and flourishing. The role of language is subtle but powerful. How information is framed and chunked affects the ease with which attention flows. Clear prose, well-designed diagrams, and thoughtful editing reduce cognitive load and increase the rate at which deep patterns can be grasped. The craft of explanation is an attention technology. Good explanation turns a forest of facts into a traversable map, and it allows the mind to apply scarce focus where it yields productive structure. Resilience is key. Systems must be robust to shocks and flexible in repair. Attention infrastructures that are brittle collapse under stress. Redundancy, distributed authority, and simple manual overrides create systems that can be repaired quickly. The design aim is not to eliminate failure. It is to make failure manageable and repairable. A resilient attention city anticipates disruption and maintains paths to re-establishment of focus. Attention architectures should also value modular experimentation. Small-scale trials, time-boxed within limited contexts, permit learning without catastrophic risk. A practice adopted at the neighborhood or team level can be scaled if evidence supports it. This experimental culture mirrors the scientific method and makes refinement iterative, which is necessary because attention systems interact in complex ways that rarely allow for reliable top-down design without local adaptation. There is a metaphysical comfort in this approach. Seeing attention as something that can be shaped removes moral panic about weakness and places emphasis on craft. The mind is not a failing appliance. It is a system that responds to structure. Designing better structures therefore becomes an act of liberation because it reduces the burden on momentary will and redistributes cognitive load into supportive environments. The intention behind architecture of attention is not control. It is liberation through design. A final note on temporality. Attention architecture is not about speed for its own sake. It is about tempo. A life with varied tempos, with pockets of slowness embedded into a faster world, produces richness. Tempo becomes an ethical variable. Designing days with varied tempos is a form of care, a recognition that depth emerges in slow cycles and that novelty renews energy when spaced out by intervals of rest and reflection. At the end of a day measured by intentional attention, the sense of coherence is palpable. The mind feels stitched together. Fragments align into patterns. The small acts of focus become arguments in favor of a life that is designed, rather than merely endured. Architecture of attention is the quiet. Engineering of those moments, it is the set of choices that transform the ambient possibilities into a lived narrative that accumulates meaning, one ordered hour at a time. Attention is the medium through which life is fashioned. The work of designing its architecture is technical, ethical, and aesthetic. It requires awareness of physiology, environment, culture, and politics. It requires humility about complexity and courage to enact slow changes. The reward is not immediate heroism. It is the patient generosity of coherence, the quiet satisfaction of a mind that moves through work like a practiced instrument, producing structures that survive the erosions of time. In that survival, the life gains weight, and in that weight, the small city of moments becomes a place worth inhabiting.